Breaking news on Iran. Fears that more violence could happen today. People expected to take to the streets yet again. And so far, though, no word on whether protesters have already started to gather. Saturday's protests did take a dramatically violent turn. Iranian state TV reporting 13 dead and more than 100 people injured. For some perspective on this unrest, I'm joined live by Raghida Dergham, senior diplomatic correspondent for the London-based Al Hayat, as well as MSNBC analyst. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Let's get to this issue. We have this top dissident cleric getting involved now with a statement. This further discredits the regime at this point, doesn't it? I mean, you have a top cleric getting involved here.
Certainly, it further erodes the credibility of the regime, and it further questions the ability of this regime to go on with business as usual. I think it's very important that we're hearing different voices from the same, from different shades of the theocratic, nationalistic, Soviet-era regime, if you will. But it's also important not to forget that there are other voices that are challenging the regime itself. Altogether, it's the theocratic base of the regime itself.
Okay. There is a larger Middle East contact potential. I mean, we have the president's statement today, in part meant for the entire region, not just for Iran. Is that how you see it?
I tell you, I think the best thing, for example, for Israel to do, I saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on NBC meet the press a little earlier. The best thing Mr. Netanyahu could do is actually stay out of it completely, because the idea that the Israelis would get involved one way or another is going to only strengthen the ruling regime, and they're going to take that as a pretext for many different things. And the second thing that Mr. Netanyahu and the Israeli government need to do is that should there be any provocation, should there be any through Lebanon, I think to stay put and be quiet about it and not be dragged into any escalation, because that will change the subject from what's going on inside Iran. So that's a very important element there.
Yeah, the state-run TV calling the protesters members of terrorist groups. I mean, they're trying to get a handle on all this, but they seem to be kind of behind the eight ball.
Yeah, well, you know, the protesters are, of course, I'm sure that they are gathering, their organizers are gathering to make policy beyond just the demonstrations on the streets. They've been there and done that before. Remember the revolution of 1979 when everybody went out? What had happened is that the mullahs confiscated that revolution and took it for themselves, and they left the other demonstrators sort of sidestepped. Now they have learned their lesson. I am pretty certain that someone who is organizing them, they are certainly thinking of what's next. It's a long haul. I don't think it's happening, it's concluding in a day or two. I think that this is a very interesting evolution of what's going on in Iran that is to be watched incredibly closely. And I'm sure President Obama and his team are watching it closely in order to draw a new policy, possibly, because the first one was of engaging this regime, and now they may be having to take another look.
Raghida Dergham, thank you very much for the insight. Appreciate that as always.
Thank you.
Be sure to stay.